Hey guys, so today I got a pretty fun topic for you, how to install Sitecore 9 in an Azure PaaS environment, stands for Platform as a Service. So this is a pretty popular topic, and I think this step-by-step guide is going to be very helpful for those trying to do that. Let's just kind of get started. The first step is to install Azure, so you can run Azure PowerShell commands. Or to get started, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open up PowerShell. You make sure you run this as an administrator. I like to use PowerShell ISE, but you can use just regular PowerShell commands if you want. But what I'm really going to do is create a PowerShell script that you can just run to run your ARM templates. And you could potentially include this into your Sitecore projects and potentially even use them inside Gulp to automatically spin up new environments if you wanted to. This kind of takes you into that direction so that you could do something like that. So like I said, the first thing I need to do is just make sure Azure's installed. There's kind of two different ways you can install it. The best way and the way that Microsoft recommends is to use the PowerShell gallery to actually go out and get the most latest version of Azure SDKs and then use that locally. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do just a check to see if PowerShell gallery command tool exists. So I'm going to do PowerShell get list. Select object. Actually, I'm going to do this in one other location. I'm actually going to do it down here because I'm actually just running single line commands. Kind of starting out when you're trying to set up your environment for running this PowerShell script that we're going to create here in a second, you need to kind of do some steps first before you do that. It looks like I already have Azure installed, but just to make sure that we have it installed, and the way you would check this is the way I'm doing it now. It's saying now I have PowerShell get 1.0.0.1. If you find that you don't have it installed, I'll include a link where you can go and get this off the web. But most people running Windows 10 probably will have this installed already, and probably even those running Windows 8.1. So now that we have that, what we need to do is just have it install the Azure RM PowerShell scripts. So to do that, all I need to do is do install module Azure allow clobber, which basically means it's going to overwrite whatever is there. Hit enter, going to think for a few minutes. It's basically trying to run from an untrusted repository. I'm basically just going to say yes to this. So yes, I want to install things from the PowerShell gallery. And now as you can see, it's starting to pull down everything related to Azure. These are specific to Azure, so they're not Sitecore specific. So if you're wanting to do anything with Azure with PowerShell, these commandlets are important to have. So, all right, it's done. Step 2 or step 3, I guess I'm up to now, going to Sitecore and downloading the Azure Toolkit. So I'm going to go out to Sitecore. Just search for Sitecore Azure Toolkit. That'll take us to some things I've already actually downloaded, but I'll just click on the first link. So today I'm going to do a Sitecore 9 install. So I'm actually going to install this toolkit. If you're installing different versions of Sitecore other than 9.0 and you're actually wanting to install 8.2, for example, you'll want to make sure that you grab the right toolkit that works with that. Most of these, I believe, are backwards compatible. If you're working with 8.2 update 4, you should be able to still use this toolkit as well. But if you're using obviously 8.2, you're not going to be able to install a Sitecore 9 instance with that. I'm just going to go ahead and click on 2.0, click Sitecore Azure, click on continue. It's going to ask me to log in. I just logged in, and now it's going to pull it down. It's 13 megs. So now I'll go show on folder. So here it is, Sitecore Azure Toolkit 2.0. So let me just go ahead and unzip the main one here. Extract all. All right, it's done. Sitecore Azure Toolkit. What I want to do is move this location. So it's unzipped. It's technically installed it if you consider it as just unzipping it as installing it. But I want to put it in a more memorable location. Where I think would be a good location for this is actually my Sitecore folder. This is where I install SIM. But it's actually a good location for using Azure. This is usually where I put my Azure stuff as well. So I'll just create a folder called Azure, and that will be at the top so it's easy to see. And then in here, I'll just drop this stuff. So inside here, you'll have some copyright information, some README information, etc. But the main heart of this is the tools folder. And you want this Sitecore cloud.commandlets.psm1 file, which is basically all your modules. You'll have the module for installing Sitecore ARM templates, as well as the one for creating WDP package files, which I'll explain briefly here in a second. So now that I've done that, there's kind of a couple steps. It kind of splits a little bit, and I think the big one that I want to describe is just setting up your Azure environment. So if you've never used Azure before, it's kind of good because if you create an account with Azure, you'll get $200 free in free credits. If you've never used it, this is a great time to join, and now you can actually spin up your environment and potentially play around with your environment for free. Really an awesome thing. So to get over to Azure, you can just type in portal.azure.com. Once you're logged in, which I just logged in just then. So you'll have a list in here. If it's the first time coming in, you're gonna have information in here. You're basically not gonna have any resources. So this will be empty, whereas I have a bunch of resources already. But the thing you'll want to do is you'll want to set up a blob storage. So the blob storage is where you're going to actually store all your WDP files, web deploy packages. I've actually already created this, but I'm going to go ahead and just show again the process of creating a blob storage, just for those that have never done it before. So it's pretty simple. All you want to do that is go over to here, and you're actually going to click on New. And you can type in, well, actually you don't need to. You can just click on storage, and you can just click on the storage account. There's actually a tutorial for that as well. You want to give it a unique name. So if you have a kind of code name that you go by, for example, I could go Sitecore Master WTP storage, for example, could be mine. I mean, it has to be unique. And when I say unique, I mean it has to be unique across the entire Azure ecosystem. So just coming up when saying, storage obviously will not work here because somebody's using that. WDP Azure is what I'll go with. That's what I have there. You definitely want to select Resource Manager. So the difference and why you see differences here, Classic is there is an old style of Azure called Classic. That's no longer, well, I guess it's still supported because you can still select Classic here, but you want to go with Resource Manager. Basically, resource management is the way that Azure is now set up and the best way to work with Azure. You can select the account kind, so you can either be general purpose or blob storage. I typically like to have blob storage. It might be even cheaper than standard as well, but just go with the blob. Standard is fine for this. And you can read about the differences and the costs associated with each type and things like that. Obviously, premium might be a little bit more redundant, so your data might not be lost. But we're not too worried about that in this case study. But if you're in a more production environment, you might worry about this a little bit, although your web deploy packages, you probably don't care about as much. You can select your replication, so you can have local redundant storage, you can have geo redundant storage, or you can just have read access geo redundant storage. I'm just going to go with read access geo redundant storage. Then you have access tier. This is based off how often you're going to access this data. You don't really need hot storage, meaning it's not going to be accessed a whole lot. You're really just going to run occasional ARM templates against these web deploy packages inside your storage, and so it's not really going to be hit as frequently as a website storage might be. And then you can do secure transfer of data. I don't think that's necessary either. If you had sensitive data in there, you might have that there. Your subscription depends on what subscription you currently have. I have some different subscriptions there. And then lastly, you should select your resource group if you have existing ones, or you can create a new one. A resource group is just a grouping of all your resources. So I'm actually just going to call this Sitecore Azure. Should also pick a location for this. So I'm just going to keep it with North Central US since it doesn't really matter. There might be pricing differences between different regions, like East US 2 might be cheaper than East US 1. but probably not a whole lot of difference there either. There's options for automation, but we just really just need to create this blob. So let's just click on create. And now it's just going to basically, behind the scenes, it's going to start firing up this blob storage for us. And this is where we're going to drop in our new WDP files. While that's doing that, another thing that you need to do is go back to the Sitecore website and go to downloads. And you're really going to need to download the WDP files for Azure Sitecore 9. So if I go down to downloads, you'll notice that if you've used this before, there's some other options, but you also see these Azure App Service. So the download options for on-premise, this is if you were installing this on your local machine, this would be for local environments that you're setting up. But what we're going to install today is actually we're going to do an XP1 install of Sitecore 9. So it's actually going to install quite a lot of stuff out of the box. But the great thing is if you're on a paid account, which I believe I am now because I've probably used up all my credits, you can just have it spin up all this stuff and then just delete it, and your cost should be pretty minimal. If you're obviously setting up a production environment for a client or something like that, your costs, you're obviously going to already be aware of the costs, and you're already going to make sure that you install and keep this environment up in your client's Azure environment. So I'll select packages for XP scaled, and that will start downloading. It's a 1 gig file, so it's going to take some time. All right, that's been now completed. So what I'm going to do is go into show in folder. So you can see that I have downloaded in the past other Sitecore 9 features here, but I'm just going to unzip this because what I need is the WDP files, not the zip of these. So what I want to do is just click extract all. Let's see that I have this, and it basically contains a bunch of extracted WDP files or Sitecore WDP files, which are Sitecore web deploy packages. So in XP1, you're going to have a CD node, a CM node, a processing node, a reporting node, and then you're going to have all the things related to the marketing automation, the XConnect or XDB collection services, and reference data, etc. So all that's here. What we need to do is get this up into our cloud. There is a tool for doing that. So let's go ahead and download that to this then. Downloading for Windows, and basically it's just a tool that allows me to kind of see what's in my Azure resource groups and see what blobs I have, and then I can upload files to it, download files, etc. So it's kind of like a cool blob manager tool. So download Storage Explorer. Off the screen, I'm just basically all I'm doing is going through the steps of installing this. It's done. Let's launch it. All right, it's open. So now I'm going to be asked about adding an Azure account. Yeah, so it's just going to ask me to log in. And then it's authenticating that login I just typed in, which will give me all the environments or storage accounts I have access to. So I created the storage account previously just now in my MSDN dev storage account. So here is the storage account I created. So now I can actually see what's inside of this blob containers, and I don't have anything inside that. So now what I'm going to do is create a blob container. This is where I'm going to put all my Sitecore 9 WDP files. So now here's the interface. What I'm going to do is upload all those files I just unzipped, and I'll just go over here. I'm looking for the XP scaled packages. So I want all these guys. So I'll select open. I'll select them as blob, and I'm not going to select a folder. So now it's just going to start uploading all these files. When it's done, I'm actually going to go ahead and delete. Down here at the bottom is where you can see it's taking those blobs, the WDP files from my local system, and deploying them up. So this may take a while since they're quite a lot of files and they're quite large. So while those are running, I'm going to do a few more steps because this is just one of many steps. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to Microsoft, or not Microsoft, but the Sitecore download path. So the other thing I really need is the ARM templates themselves. So these were the packages. What I need is the templates. So where would you get those? It's actually quite simple from GitHub, and basically this is the one we're looking for. So we'll go over here and we're looking for the 9.0 resources, and we're doing an XP, just a regular XP here. This is a Sitecore XP environment. You can kind of read about it. So there's two files that are really important in these. You're going to have your Azure deploy file, and you're going to have your Azure parameters file. So your parameters file is where it's going to have information about where these packages live, which are actually going to point out to my blob where I'm setting up all this blob stuff. It's going to have information about your authentication API keys. It's going to have your Sitecore admin password, SQL Server logins and passwords as well. And it's going to have a location, which is where you select your geographical location of where this would sit. It could be different than the blob storage, or it could be in the same location if you wanted. So what we want to do is just get access to these deploy files. I'm going to actually put these up on my blob as well. We're basically going to put all the stuff up on the blob, the ARM templates, the parameters file, everything like that, as well as the WDP files. The first step to get this up there is we need to download it. There's kind of a couple ways you can do this. You can just download everything. One way you can do this is if you click here, you should see 8 releases. So I'm just going to go ahead and download Sitecore Azure Quick Start Templates 2.0. I'm going to download it as a zip, and it's a pretty small file. So if I go to Show in Folder, I can actually see I've downloaded it before as well. Yeah, right here. So basically now you have access to all the ARM templates, all the parameters. And keep in mind these ARM templates, I'm not really covering this too much in this course, but I'm going to cover this in a future course, is that you can customize them. So what we're doing is installing a very default instance of these ARM templates of an XP scaled or an XP1 setup. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just grab this XP. I'm going to actually not copy that real quick. Let me, what I want to do is I want to put this up on Azure, so on my blob. I've actually done this for my Sitecore 824 WDP in the past. Inside the WDP is basically an XPO. This is where my ARM template sits. So as to follow that same kind of practice, I'm going to set up an XP folder inside my Sitecore 9.0 WDP file or blob. I'm going to create a new, yeah, there we go. I'm going to create a XP. And so now I have an XP, and then I'm just going to now upload files as well for this. Sorry, these windows keep opening on my other screen for some reason. I don't know why, but so I need my Azure Quick Start Templates 2.0. Go into that, Sitecore 9. I'm going to go into XP, and then I'm just going to select all this. See if it will pick up the. Actually, let me change this real quick. I'm going to upload a folder instead. Here again, I was putting this on my other screen. I don't know why. And I'm going to select XP. And now it's adding even more things to this upload process. You know, it's got a lot to upload. While all that's going up, there's plenty of stuff going up. I actually need to customize my XP install first before I actually send it up, but this file just needs to be modified. So if you have Visual Studio Code on your machine, you can just spin or open that, and then you can specify all these paths. These are all going to be needing to wait till that process is done of uploading all those things to my blob, because I'm going to need these URLs that I'm going to specify here. Then there's this auth certification or certificate blob and auth certificate password. So this is new in Sitecore 9. So obviously, since we're using XConnect, you're going to need to secure it. So obviously, out of the box, if you're doing this for your production environment, you're going to need to get a trusted authorization certificate, which you can get from providers such as VeriSign or GeoTrust, things like that. You should go out and get an actual cert that you can use for this. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to get a certificate that's self-signed. So this process is slightly different. The first thing is you're going to need to find your self-signed cert. For this, I am actually going to use the one I've used for Sitecore 9 with the Sitecore install framework. I'm going to use the same one. It should work in this instance. I just need to, there's kind of two steps to it. First, you need your cert. This will apply to any certs that you have, even if it's a self-signed versus a real cert. And you're going to convert that down into a blob or a base 64 string that represents your certificate. And then you need to also provide the password that you originally had for that signed cert. Since it was a self-signed and it was a Sitecore 9 install, I already know the password to that self-signed cert is secret. I still need to get the actual blob of that. So the next thing I need to do is actually add an additional parameter to my parameters file relating to the Sitecore certificate issue with having a self-signed cert. So there's additional parameter that we have to specify. I'll also note that this would also apply to if you've used some sort of Active Directory certificate service to create the certificate within your organization. Such as an enterprise level certificate, then this would also be a step that you would have to follow for that as well. Allow invalid client certificates. It's just the line we'll have to add here. And the value is just going to be true. So that's all we need to add. So the last part is just getting this blob. So how to convert a PFX or PFX extension file, which is basically your certificate, into a base 64 string or blob of that certificate. Also, one other thing I'd like to just show real quick is the rep authentication API key. This is something that you actually generate yourself. So we can just create a random GUID to place in there. And this just allows communication between your CM instance and your reporting instances. So what I'll do is I'll just create a GUID real quick. I don't know if braces are required, but it's just something we can put in there real quick. And some of this information you might want to save or store somewhere else just for if you need to connect to it in future scenarios. Now you have access because you know the access information or the API information. So lastly, like I said, I'll just cover how to create this blob. First, let's find the certificate I created. So this was part of the Sitecore 9 install I did a while ago, probably about 2 or 3 weeks ago. So I believe, let's see if I can find where I put this. It looks like a place. So let's just steal the P12 or the PKS file, which is not really here. Actually, let's try to run this through the PowerShell script. So we're actually going to take the file that I have located in this folder, the Solar SSL that I originally created. This is just a self-signed cert. I'm going to take this P12 file and I'm going to basically make it as part of the PowerShell script I'm going to run. Deployment ID and location, things like this does not have to be specified. Here in this parameters file, you can actually pass these in as part of the start Sitecore Azure deployment step in the Sitecore Azure Toolkit. So let's just go ahead and get this deploy parameters file, this Azure ARM template, the parameters file up to my blob, so that way it's specified and we can start using it. And then I'll start walking through the creation of the PowerShell script that we'll run and use to spin up this Azure environment using an XP1 topology. So I'll go to downloads. I'll go to this environment. I'll look for my XP environment, and I'll just save here. So, and now I'll go ahead and upload this as well. So XP, and I will go ahead and upload a file. I'm just going to select that Azure path that I just updated. See, it's just changed a few minutes ago. I don't really want, no, it's actually, that's probably why I'm having so many issues. Let's create an XP folder. Makes it really confusing. I'll just upload that. Shouldn't take too long to do this. It's asking me if I want to replace it. So I'll say replace, apply to all. And now it's saying it's uploaded this. Let me see if I can fix this issue that I'm having. It should be pretty quick, I would imagine. And let's just confirm that's still there. So if I go up, I'll just delete this. So now I have it properly organized. I have the XP, which has my ARM template and its parameters file, and it's pretty much all set to go. So let's go ahead and close this, or just move it to the side so I can come back to it. Now we really just need to move to creating my install PowerShell script. So it's pretty easy to do. I'm just going to put it here to the left, and I'm just going to save this file so that way later in the future I can actually come back to this and make changes to it and potentially use it for future purposes. Sitecore Azure. Just going to call it ARM install. All right, so let's go ahead and start writing our PowerShell script. So I'm actually going to define a bunch of variables. This is where you can define just kind of default information, and then we can go to greater lengths on how you can customize these. You could actually build this into a parameters file, or these hard-coded variables, you could potentially create them as parameters instead, so that you could just run this PowerShell script with just some command options. But that's beyond the scope of this tutorial. So Sitecore SDK, this is just going to be the path to our Sitecore Azure Toolkit. So this is in C Sitecore Azure, Sitecore Azure, I'm supposed to do that, tools / and we're looking for that file I specified before. We're looking for the PSM1 file. So that's that. Now we need the Azure ARM template file. What you could have done is you could have left this in the GitHub account, but obviously if you're going to customize it, you probably wouldn't want to do that. You'd want to pull it down and do kind of like what I've done here. This is the file I'm referring to. So I've pulled it down and I've uploaded it to a blob somewhere. So if you were going to customize it, this would be the best location for it. If you were, however, wanting to just use the default one, you could go into GitHub and just pull the raw value of this file. So for the topology and for the version that you're looking for. So let's just go to properties, and properties will give us the path to this file. That's actually the wrong one. I'm looking for this one. So copy that. So I am just going to have the SE template. I'm just going to call this ARM template. And it's literally just a website URL or URL to a file. The deployment ID is another thing that we might need. Like I did in my ARM template parameters file, I actually specified the deployment ID, but you can also specify this via this as well. I'm just going to leave this one empty for now because I'm just going to use the one that's in the parameters file. So I want to even pass it in as a parameter. You'll need the license file. So we need to specify a path to that. So the path to that will be C Sitecore files license.xml. This is also something we specify in the parameters file, but you don't need to. So you can just specify as part of the script itself. We also need the certificate file. So we're actually going to use PowerShell to actually turn that certificate file into base64 blob of characters, and then we're just going to use that to pass that to the Sitecore Azure Toolkit's command. So I need to specify where that's at. There's a few locations where that's at, but we can just go to certificates. I'm going to do that. And we need the specific file, so we're just going to use this file. Next, we need the subscription ID. Which I'll cover here in a second. We also will need the location where we want this to install. I'm actually already provided that as part of the, I'm not sure what I'm getting, red eagle sign. We already specified as part of the Azure ARM template parameters file, so I'm not going to go ahead and specify a location. We are going to need the parameter. We're going to have to specify where the parameters file lives. So this could also be in your local file system, but we're just going to specify the parameter file from our Azure blob. So we are just going to use this and then do properties. And we're just going to take this path. And lastly is an option for parameters. This is a kind of an array of options that we're going to provide. So deployment ID, and this is how we basically pass in these parameters into our parameters file. So we won't do deployment ID, but we will do auth certificate blob, and then we'll do a system.convert to base 64 string system.io.file read all bytes, and this will be the certificate file, just like that. So basically, it's on my blog, auth certificate blob, which is the parameter that was in our JSON parameters file. We're going to pass that in. So I'm not going to pass in deployment ID, obviously, because we don't need that because we've already specified it in our parameters file. But obviously, if you want to make this more reusable, you'd want to not specify that in your parameters file, but specify it in your ARM template or in your in our PowerShell script, so that way you can spin up different deployment IDs depending on what type of environments you want. So next we need, that's kind of a configuration. So let's just give it some nice little comments to our file. Next is we're going to kind of initialize some things. So first we are going to import the module, which is our SDK up here. So we're just going to import that in. That should bring in this full path. Next, we are going to add our Azure RM account. So this is actually going to pop up a message where you log into your Azure environment. And then once it has that, it basically you can do stuff with that in your session. So next, we want to set our Azure RM context, which is basically where we're going to specify our subscription ID. And this is where the subscription ID will come in, which we'll specify here in a second. Just make sure I got this right because it didn't tell me anything. Anyways, now we will get to the actual ARM template install. And it's really simple, really. I mean, it's just one line of code, really, to just spin up an entire live environment in Azure. So I'm just going to call start Sitecore Azure deployment. And I'm not going to, well, let's name, I'm just going to give it the same name as my deployment ID, which I haven't specified yet, but I'll show adding that in a second. I'm not going to specify location. My ARM template path is going to just be SE ARM template. And then I'm going to specify my ARM parameters path. And just to clarify where I'm not getting IntelliSense here, this is because I haven't actually, this interface does not know that I've imported this module. So that's why IntelliSense isn't showing up as I'm typing some of these commands. So ARM parameters path. This actually I want to make ARM parameters URL. I believe that's a possibility. You can just specify a parameter file here. This is actually a URL, so I don't know if parameters URL is correct thing for that, but let's just find out when we get there. Let's specify a few other things here. So param file, I didn't actually give this a variable designation. License file or license XML. I mean, we specify this as part of the parameters template, so it doesn't necessarily need this, but I'm just going to specify it anyways. And lastly, we're going to set key value and just pass in the parameters array that I created previously. So that's pretty much it. Let's go ahead, and we forgot to specify a few things. So subscription is one. These are the subscriptions that it's referring to. Select subscriptions. So basically what we want to do is if we go to more services and we click on subscriptions, we can get the subscription ID here, which is just a GUID. I'm just going to give it the same name as the file, so I'm just going to give it that we specified in our parameters template. Subscription ID, we're almost got. Location, we'll specify the same value for that as well. These can be a little tricky, locations, so it might not be the name you think it is. North Central US, for example. It might actually be N Central or NC US. It depends on what it is. So hopefully this works. It will find out pretty quickly if it doesn't, because it will tell us. I'll have to get that resource groups back added to my dashboard, but so anyways, I think I'm pretty much set to go. So we can pretty much just go ahead and run this. So I'm just going to go ahead and save the changes I've made and then just click play. And error right off the bat. That would help if I spelled stuff correctly. It's failed because I canceled out of the Azure RM login. So let's go one more time. So I need to digitally sign it. Really, that just means I need to go into that file and find Sitecore Azure. And I just really need to change some of the permissions here. So, not that one, this guy, properties, unblock, and click OK, unblocked. One way to fix this is just to change the execution policy. So let's just go ahead and do that real quick. Set execution policy, and we can set this to unrestricted. So everything will run in here, which is fine for this instance. So let's run it again. Run once. Looks like another issue. Get the full gambit here. It might be because it's also being blocked. So let's go back in and just properties this. Make sure this is unblocked. I really want to do all these, so I would hope I wouldn't have to go through all these. So let's run it again. So now it's asking me to log in, which is what I expected on another screen. So let me just bring this over so you can see it. So it's bringing me in. This was showing up before anyway. So I'm just going to log in with my account, and then I'm just going to type in my password to my account. Click sign in. It's telling me information about my thing. I have a feeling that didn't exist. Let's just change this over to path and see if it still lets me take in a URL. I can't remember off the top of my head. So run, it's going to ask me to log in again. I'm just going to set this to East US. It's the easiest one to specify. So one of the issues I think that might be causing the raw parameter issue that I noticed before is that I had inside my parameters file, I had a path that had just one backslash, but I needed to escape that obviously. So, and that's why it was giving me this weird kind of color to everything. So I fixed that, and hopefully now that will allow me to run this. I've uploaded already, and it will allow me to run this ARM template. So go ahead and do that. I will now click play again. I am now also specifying the East US location. I have also confirmed that this solar certificate is actually converting into base 64 correctly. So I knew that that wasn't an issue as well. So I'm just kind of tracking down where this issue might be. And this is similar tracking down that you're going to go through when you try to install. All right, I've logged in. And I'm still getting the issue. That wasn't it. All right, after exploring a little bit more, I think I've actually had a bad parameter here. So this actually should be ARM template URL, as can be seen in ARM template URL when I was exploring this start Sitecore Azure deployment commands options. These are all the parameters. So let's run this again. I'm going to save this change. And that looks like it was it. All right, I think I've tracked down the issue. So what I did is I opened up the Azure Toolkit, Sitecore Azure Toolkit and track down the line number that was failing. Had that /raw basically failing on this file, and I figured out why. It's because you come over here, you can see that it's not finding that file, even though that's the URL I've been provided. But what we can do is actually pull this right off the file system. So we can do C, let's close that, C, Sitecore, I believe is where all this is at. No, not yet. Let's move it there, this guy. Actually, I'm going to go up a little, just copy this guy. Go to C, Sitecore, Azure. I'm just going to drop this guy here. So then I'm just going to specify it as a path. Sitecore 990. And I'm going to pick XP. And I'm going to pick Azure parameters. So now it should be loading the template file from my local file system, not the one that's on the web. So this should work without issue now. Actually, one thing before I get to running it, just let's make sure the proper permissions are on that file as well. So properties, and there's no settings set, so we should be good. It's probably because I moved it. So let's log in again with the login I have for my Azure environment. As you can see, it has successfully run or started the process. It's saying the provisioning state is succeeded, which means it's in the process of provisioning this out to Azure. It's going to take quite a while to complete the provisioning, which you'll get another message saying that it's completed successfully. So that's pretty much it for today's session. Hopefully you enjoyed this session and would like more tutorials on Azure and Sitecore in the future. I plan on doing more of those type of tutorials in the future. So please be on the lookout for those. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave some comments and just reach out to me via LinkedIn or Twitter or Slack or one of the other various channels that you can reach out to me. All right, thank you.